Hey, everybody, I'm Liz Woods, and I'm here today with Leslie Zane. Leslie is an award winning marketer and TEDx speaker. She's a leading authority in utilizing the instinctive mind for brand and business growth. She founded her own company, Triggers, in 1995, which is a behavioral science based brand consulting firm. And her groundbreaking strategies have generated over $20 billion in revenue for Fortune 100 clients. Today, she's here to talk about her new book coming out this spring called The Power of Instinct. I'm so excited to learn everything. Thank you so much for being here, Leslie.
Oh, I'm excited too. Thank you so much for having me. And you're my neighbor. I'm in
Yay!
Armonk. You're in Rye. We
Yes.
could have done this in
Fabulous.
person. What's wrong with
I
us?
know, it's true. So tell me first about Triggers and what that business is all about, maybe how you got started there.
Yeah, sure. So, prior to founding Triggers in 1995, I worked inside brand management in large companies like Procter and Gamble and Johnson and Johnson, and these are
Mm,
companies that are supposed to know everything about marketing. So I
right.
thought, like, here I am, I'm going to learn from the best. And what I slowly learned is that marketing is really hard and that a lot of the brands that they had in their portfolio actually weren't growing. And I thought, well,
Mm,
this is odd. If P&G doesn't know how to consistently drive growth on their businesses, that means nobody knows. And I
mhm,
had very different ideas from everybody else. I was talking about the instinctive mind and about emotion and about really getting to the essence of what drives people to purchase. I thought we were over promoting, like in a sense, always discounting to get people to buy. And I'm like, well, if you have to discount and promote and give coupons to get people to buy, doesn't that mean that you haven't really created an instinctive connection with the consumer?
mm.
So I was challenging all these things, and people literally looked at me like I had 17 heads. Um, because honestly, that kind of thinking about the instinctive mind was, not present in the business world at that point in time. We learned
Mm,
much more about the brain, about system one, system two, the conscious mind, the unconscious mind, like 30 years late, essentially, well, not 30 years later, maybe 15 years later, then I started my company. And so that started to kind of penetrate the business world at that point. But back then, I was like this strange person from another planet. And so
wow.
because it was really difficult to get my ideas to be acted upon when I was inside those corporations, I started my own company in 1995 because I knew that in order to cultivate my approach, I kind of needed to get away, but I got away to come back in a sense because I ended up servicing those same clients, but with a process and an approach that really worked to change people's minds and behavior about the
Sure.
brands they're buying.
Yeah.
Um,
So that, I mean, I'm so
yeah.
curious. What is your approach and what do you believe versus, the Procter and Gambles and all the other
Oh,
big
I'm
companies?
so glad. I'm so glad you asked. So essentially, the way most marketers still operate is that they try to persuade the conscious mind, persuade people to, you know, to buy their brand. And so they
Hmm.
barrage you with messages, they give you coupons, they'll discount, they'll do all of these things to convince you that you should buy their brand. And the problem with that is that the conscious mind is resistant to change, it's rigid, and it's basically like coming up against a brick wall because, well,
Hmm.
you know this about, the last conversation you had with your with your husband or with
Yeah.
your kids or like a relative over, Thanksgiving talking about politics. You actually can't persuade anybody to do anything,
Mm.
right?
Hmm.
People are
Yeah, it's like
resistant.
why can't we get help with the dishes?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So what you wanna do is you wanna actually go through the unconscious mind, which it turns
Okay.
out is far more malleable. Conscious mind
Hmm.
is rigid, it's like a brick wall. The unconscious mind kinda doesn't see you coming, and ideas kind of penetrate in there without kind of people realizing it, and you're kind of what you're doing is you're piggybacking on things they already believe, piggybacking on things they already know, and that's kind of the path of least resistance to changing a mind, changing behavior, or getting a sale in business. And it's all the same, whatever it is.
Hmm.
So this is about
So what would
market.
be some examples of that?
So an example of that would be inspiring people with fantasy, as an example. People
Mm-hmm.
actually will say consciously that they want reality, that they want you to show them, let's say you were selling a household cleaner. They want to
Mm-hmm.
see the house, a messy house with real kids and, you know, kids running around and everybody crazy. Like they want, they say that they want that reality. Turns out they don't want reality. They want fantasy. They want a beautiful
Mm-hmm.
house that's all perfect, that looks organized, that looks like it came out of HGTV. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and they want the kids to be well behaved. It's They want fantasy. So in fact, if you understand that the unconscious mind yearns for fantasy, everything that's ever done incredibly well in advertising has been a fantasy. Um, that actually is the way to get people to sort of do what you want them to do, which is to inspire them with fantasy. That's just one example.
Yeah, that's really
Um,
interesting. And it makes a lot of sense when you think about social media right now and how I mean, it's natural, but you're drawn to things that are beautiful. So, social media is really, I'm sure, a big part of all of the success of a lot of businesses these days, with all the beautiful homes and like you're saying, the makeup and the yards and the homes, all these things that,
100%. But they'll
yeah.
tell you that they in if you do research and focus groups
Hmm.
as an example, which we don't do, we do memory elicitation, which is a completely different technique um, to get to people's subconscious minds. But
Hmm.
in focus groups, people will tell you they want reality. And
Interesting.
so that's why you really need to understand that you need to bypass the conscious mind altogether and go straight to the unconscious mind in order to drive growth of any business or any brand or really any idea that you want to sell to anybody. Does that make
Hmm.
sense?
It does make sense. It makes perfect sense. And you're coming out with a book.
I
How
am.
how are you transitioning from being a business owner to an author? How did it all come about? Was it like a COVID project, or what? How did you start the idea of writing a book?
I've been thinking about writing a book for probably 7 years, but I could
Mm-hmm.
never really, excuse me, got around to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think kind of as I got older, I realized that I have a legacy of like 30 years of learning and tips and things that I've learned that I really just want to share. And
Yeah.
this it felt like the right time to do it. I found a phenomenal agent and publisher, Hachette, and they recognized that the book that I was talking about had a broad appeal, that it wasn't really that even though the principle, like I learned my principles in the world of Fortune 500 brands, but they apply just as easily to, a person who's creating a dog walking business as it
Mm.
applies to the CEO and CMO of Nike.
Nice. So it's
So
almost like a manual for
uh,
business owners.
100%. I think that's a good way to think about it. But
Nice.
it tells a series of stories. So each chapter takes a rule that we've been taught in marketing and it turns it on its head. Because think
Mm.
about it this way: the rules of marketing that I was brought up on at P&G, at Johnson and Johnson, at Harvard Business School, all those rules of marketing were created for a time that we actually thought the brain makes decisions consciously, but we now know that that's not true. That 95% of our decisions are actually made with the unconscious mind. So wait a
Mm.
minute, if the rules were made for the conscious mind and we now know that most decisions are made with the unconscious mind, that sort of means we need a new set of rules. So
Yeah.
this book is the new set of rules. The name of the book is The Power of Instinct: The New Rules of Persuasion in Business and Life, for Business and Life. And so what I'm doing is taking all the old rules of marketing, and I'll give you an example of one in a minute. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying, throw out that old rule. Here's the new rule that works better for the unconscious mind. So here's a perfect example. Every single marketer, from the time you're, an assistant or associate brand manager, and just getting your training, you learn that uniqueness is the most important thing for a brand to be. You need to be unique. You need to stand out. You need to be the purple cow, differentiate or die. Guess what? That doesn't work for the unconscious mind, because The human brain is hardwired to connect with the familiar. It actually pushes away the unfamiliar and the
Mm.
unique. I mean, think about it this way. If you take a baby who knows its mother's face, which is familiar, out of the mother's arms, it's going to scream. And it's going to keep screaming until you give the baby back to its mother,
Mhm.
because we're hardwired to connect with the familiar and reject the unique.
Mhm.
So, what that means is that actually the familiar is more important than the unique. You don't need to create things from Mars. You just need to create familiar things that are comfortable for the brain and put a little creative twist on it.
Mhm.
And then you have something that I call, distinctive. So distinctiveness is the new uniqueness that I'm
Mm.
promoting. So
I love it.
familiarity is more important than uniqueness, but distinctiveness is best of all, because then you get the best of both worlds. You take something familiar, put a little twist on it, and now it's distinctive to your brand. Does that make
And I
sense?
know you, yeah, it does make sense. I also know you talk a lot about storytelling in your book. Can you share what you found out about that and how you feel like it can be used in terms of marketing?
I mean, storytelling is a great approach, but it has to be the right story. And
Okay.
have to have the right components. It needs to connect with your audience in terms of some insight or human truth that they're looking for. You need to
Mm-hmm.
have the right benefit. So storytelling is a great approach, but that's almost like too big a bucket as a whole. It's about
Mm-hmm.
deconstructing your story into the right pieces and making sure that each of those pieces is what connects with your audience and elevates your brand in people's minds. And one thing for sure, we should never be asking consumers, and this is going to sound counterintuitive, what they like and dislike. Because what
Mm-hmm.
they like and dislike does not matter. You like things all day on Facebook. Do you buy them? No. So,
Mm-hmm.
like and dislike and appeal, what we've learned is that it's not really very relevant in determining how you're going to do your marketing. Here's what does matter: what elevates people's perceptions, and what elevates perceptions about your brand, and
Mm-hmm.
what new associations does that give them about your brand? New positive associations. Positive associations are what the brain retains, and
Mm-hmm.
those go into your memory structure and eventually create um, sort of a larger footprint for the brand. And that makes it more salient in the mind, and then it becomes your instinctive go-to. Do you want to
Wow.
understand kind of like what? Can I take a minute to just kind of
Of
explain what a
course,
brand
please.
is?
Yes, please tell me what is a brand?
Yeah. So a brand is the cumulative memories that have gotten sort of glued to your brand, your idea, your product, your service, your company, whatever it is. You are also a brand in people's minds. So the
Mm-hmm.
cumulative memories. So it's not up here,
Mm-hmm.
it's down here. It's in people's memories. So when you go to the supermarket and you reach for your go-to brands that you buy all the time, whether it's Bounty paper towels or Poland Spring water or Aquafina water or
Mm-hmm.
Gatorade, those go-to brands, you're doing that because you have a large physical footprint of associations and memories about that brand in your brain. And
Mm-hmm.
the brand that has the largest footprint with the most memories, the most associations, that's your instinctive go-to, and you don't even think about it. You're literally sleep shopping,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're going to this, you're reaching, you're putting it in your cart and you're walking out. If your brain didn't have the ability to make those snap decisions, you'd be in the supermarket for 3 weeks looking through all
Mm.
those different products. But
That's true.
you're able to get in there in and out in 5 minutes
Yeah.
because your brain is making these snap decisions and you're not really even controlling your purchases. It's your
It's
what
interesting. Yeah.
it's called the brand connectome, and it's
Right.
behind me. That's the brand connectome right there. That's
Ah,
a physical
nice.
model of what the brain looks like in the brain. What the
It's
brand
interesting
looks
you
like in
say
the brain.
that. Yeah, I we had neighbors who were from Sweden and they lived here for about 5 years and they couldn't believe the cereal aisle at our grocery store. And they said it would take them so long to pick what they were going to get. And in my head, I was like, I don't know,
Takes
Cheerios or
you 2
something.
seconds. It takes
Just
you
pick
2
something.
seconds.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And it's so that's a funny, it's a really an explanation of why it would take them so long, but me not, you know?
Right, because you have the cumulative memories about those
Right.
cereals, and for them, they were all new, which also
Exactly.
explains
Interesting.
why familiar is better than unique.
Very true. You're right.
Mhm.
So Leslie, it seems like you're doing so many things, but I know that you have raised two sons.
Yeah.
How do you balance and how have you balanced it all? Being a working mom, owning your own company, now writing a book. How do you manage it all?
Um, I don't know is the answer to that. I'm not sure I do it. I balance all those things very well. My husband would
It looks
uh,
very well.
my husband would tell you that I work way too hard. I work a lot. I work all the time, but I also love what I do. So it's not like it's a problem. It may be a problem to him because he'd like me to spend more time with him. And I have a wonderful, very understanding husband. But the fact is, I love what I do. Like literally every day is exciting because I have a new business challenge that I have to solve, and I sort of can't tear myself away.
Hmm.
I love solving clients' problems and helping them drive growth. So that kind of tells you a little bit about my orientation. But I will tell you, I'm an empty nester now. But as I was raising my kids, my children were obviously and continue to be my top priority. Um, and I struggled a lot because I always felt torn. I felt torn between the business and my kids, and I wanted to be good at both. And I wanted to be the best mom, but I also wanted to be the best head of triggers. And I will tell you that what ended up happening was that my kids turned out great and I didn't need
Hmm.
to worry so much. And I think working moms, can kind of take a breath and feel a little bit, just relax a little bit more. I mean, I think if somebody had told me that 20 years ago, I might not have believed them, but it really is true. They see a lot and they learn a lot from a working mother. They're just so competent in the workplace now. They know how to deal with people. They work hard. They've got an amazing work ethic. They're ambitious. They're just doing great. And
Hmm.
I needed to relax a little bit more because they turned out great, and I didn't need to feel so torn.
Well, that's so great. And well, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right?
Oh, thank you. That's sweet.
um, And I work with a lot of women. It feels like, I mean, I think specifically for moms who are trying to either reinvent themselves in the corporate world or start their own
Mhm.
business, whatever it is, we're all dealing with this imposter syndrome of, gosh, how do I like get my foot back into it? Or, like that. How do you take that first step? How do you deal with those moments of anxiety or feeling like, am I making the right move? And how do I get over this hump of fear?
That's a great question. So I didn't never stopped working. So
Hmm.
I worked all the way through, which I definitely think helped. That doesn't answer your question. I'm going to answer your question.
Hmm.
But I think that because I was always in it. I was able to kind of see the changes in the marketplace as they were happening, adjust my company to them. And I never really felt that like a complete break. I never had that. But I will say, in general, that I think women underestimate themselves. I think they
Hmm.
don't listen to their instincts enough. And I see it like every day in the corporate world. So it's not just women starting small businesses and entrepreneurs. I think it's women in general
Hmm.
tend to not feel confident enough about their perspectives. And you learn a lot, as a mom, and you learn a lot from the other people around you, and you're grappling with all different kinds of managerial issues.
Hmm.
And so I think that, I mean, it's easy for me to say, but I really would encourage women to listen to their instincts and not doubt themselves. And I think it's more like just get up back on the horse And the more you're on the horse, the more you'll realize that it's no big deal. Because
Hmm.
you have something, I truly believe that everybody has a gift. Everybody has a gift to give, and that the world needs your gift. And so, if you believe that, and if you listen to your instincts, you'll do well. I think that, when I was younger, the big lesson that I did learn was that I should stick to my instincts, because I was, right about a lot of things. I told you about early on that everybody thought I was crazy when I was talking about instinct and the unconscious mind and emotion. And it turns out that's actually what drives marketing. And so 30
Hmm.
years later, now everybody's asking about behavioral science, but we were practicing that 30 years ago, and we became experts in that. We're the oldest company practicing behavioral science.
Mm.
Um, so I think that should show everybody that when you kind of feel strongly about something in your bones, even though the other people may tell you you're crazy, you really should stick to your guns and stick to your instincts, because you probably are onto something.
Which is like the title of your book, The Power of Instinct.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Leslie, where can we find your book?
So the Power of Instinct is in pre-sale right now.
Hmm.
It's being sold on Amazon and a couple of other book channels, and I can give a link in the
Sure.
later on. I can
Yep.
provide a link to the book. You can buy it early, and if you buy it early, you can get my special checklist. Which I think is a great handy guide for like all the things you should be thinking about when trying to grow a business. And in order to kind of accelerate its growth using some of my principles. So hopefully that would be helpful to people.
Awesome. Thank you so, so much. I really, really appreciate it.
Oh, and to get the checklist, they can write to hello at
Hmm.
triggers.com. So there'll be a
Okay.
link to do the pre-sale on the book, and then there's the email to get the checklist.
Okay. Got it.
It was great
Okay.
meeting you and,
It
and
was great
chatting with
meeting you too.
you.
Is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I don't think so. I just wish everybody the best of luck and a happy new year. And yeah, go for it. That's what I say.